Residents of Coney Island and businesses in the amusement district have lobbied for years to bring ferry service to Coney Island. Most believe that it would be built on the ocean side, centrally located and accessible to visitors and commuters, perhaps at the Steeplechase Pier or further west on the boardwalk in a protected location. No one imagined that it would be located at a remote site at Kaiser Park in Coney Island Creek at the far west end of Coney Island. In January 2019, the mayor shocked the community when he revealed that the ferry dock would be located at the Kaiser Park fishing pier, a decision that will destroy an environmentally vulnerable section of the creek currently used for recreation, research, education, and subsistence fishing. Construction and operation of the ferry at this site will poison the surrounding community, obliterate the only safe public access to Coney Island Creek, and destroy a wildlife refuge. This is the most vulnerable site on the Coney Island Creek estuary, and the loss of it due to construction of the ferry dock will be a terrible blow to the community. Most New York City ferry docks are located in former industrial areas attached to hard bulkheads. Coney Island will be the only dock located at a small beach where people are now swimming, fishing, boating, or praying. Ferries will be forced to navigate an extremely narrow and hazardous channel to access the pier. An environmental impact statement revealed that dredging this channel at the mouth of Coney Island Creek will release toxic sediments containing arsenic, lead, mercury, pesticides, PCBs, and dioxin. Construction of a ferry dock at the Kaiser Park fishing pier will open a pathway of poison to Coney Island Creek, Kaiser Park, and the adjacent Coney Island community. Constructing this ill-conceived ferry project at Kaiser Park without mitigation is a violation of the Clean Water Act. What is terribly disturbing is the Economic Development Corporation's arrogance and condescending attitude towards residents who've raised valid concerns about the ferry project's effects on the park and local community. Rather than do this project the right way, the EDC has decided to do it cheap and dirty without any regard for the health and welfare of local residents.
I'm for the ferry, but not in this area. If they want to do a ferry, do it in Coney Island where the pier is, but over here they're taken away from us. We get dumped with everything and they don't give us a chance. So if they want the ferry, let them put it over there in Sheepshead Bay or Caesar's Bazaar, but not over here. And that's how I feel about it.
Do you feel like your voices were heard?
I hope it was heard. But then a lot of times when they do these things, it's a done deal anyway.
For people, and stop telling me it's for the working people. I work at City Hall. Okay, I think it's 6 train stations here. It takes me 10 minutes to walk to the train station if I feel like walking, and I'm at City Hall. If I take this ferry from here, I have to get off of Wall Street and walk another 25 minutes. So stop telling me it's for the people that live here and work here, because it's not beneficial to those type of people.
I am dead set against this location. We worked too hard and too many years to get this park where it is, and I don't want to see us lose one drop at all. I don't like this location. I don't like the 33rd Street location. My opinion is it should be on the beach side because the people that are taking the ferry are coming in to go to the amusement area. Yes. All right, and for them to get off here and then walk 3 miles through Coney Island to get to where they want to be in the first place is ludicrous. So there's no reason, I can't see any reason why they can't do something to do it on the pier side and on the ocean side, but definitely not in this neighborhood.
The community spoke out against the Kaiser Park ferry location at numerous meetings.
Reviews, it's also known that shellfish beds are considered essential fish habitat. So being that there is oysters there naturally that are just occurring on their own, and then through the Big Oyster Project was providing educational programming, I was really surprised that that wasn't included in the environmental assessment. It talks about
you're going to dredge up all this crap. The kids swim there, people fish there, you can't keep the people out of the water, and now you're going to dredge it up and you're going to pound pilings into the water. It makes absolutely no sense. So I want to know, have you put a fund in place to protect all of us when we get sick? Because we will get sick.
You're going to be having people having to deal with this machinery and this new infrastructure and not necessarily being able to use the space for what it was intended. It's an estuary, it's an intertidal zone. It has a lot of different dynamic systems coming into play. And when you have something like the ferry, it will take precedent over what nature has created over there. So that's something that we would like you to please address and to take into consideration when you're moving forward with this project.
Thank you.
The city and the EDC have not addressed these issues. Coney Island Creek has come a long way since I took this photograph in 1969. Thanks to the Clean Water Act and heavy fines for polluters, the creek is being seen as an asset rather than a liability. This was the Kaiser Park shoreline in 1969, a fenced-off dumping ground for derelict barges. Since then, much of the park shoreline has been restored with dunes and native vegetation. This is the same location today. Kaiser Park is now the safest part of the creek because of tidal action from Gravesend Bay. The city's ferry plan will reverse 50 years of progress on Coney Island Creek. The ferry site is a vulnerable mudflat and salt marsh habitat that should be protected, not destroyed. The restored shoreline at Kaiser Park from Gravesend Bay to the fishing pier consists of mudflats, tidal salt marsh, beach grass, and sand dunes, providing important habitat and a natural diversity for the Coney Island Creek estuary. This precious landscape needs to be protected. The Spartina sprouting up along the pier is the beginning of a new tidal wetland that will be destroyed by the ferry project. Salt marshes are the nurseries of the sea and deserve to be protected, not destroyed. The EDC's permit applications to build the ferry dock are filled with falsehoods and inaccuracies that obfuscate the true impact that this project will have on the state's tidal wetlands and the water quality of Coney Island Creek. The dredging project for the ferry will poison Coney Island Creek and the surrounding community, a violation of the Federal Clean Water Act. Dredge area samples exceeded Class C contamination levels, including thresholds for lead, mercury, pesticides, PCBs, and dioxin, indicating the potential for acute toxicity. The narrow channel adjacent to Calvert Vaux Park requires construction dredging to build the ferry dock and continual maintenance dredging to keep it open for ferries. Calvert Vaux Park was an 85-acre dump and landfill that operated for 40 years and is known to contain toxic contaminants. Dredging the channel will bring carcinogenic contaminants to the surface, polluting the surrounding waters. Remediation of toxic soils dug up in the park during a project to build soccer fields cost the city $10 million. Another cleanup at the other end of the creek cost $114 million in 2006. The EDC is downplaying these dangers and claims that they will contain the pollution during dredging. This does not seem possible, as the dredging will take place in a narrow channel with little room for error. No follow-up testing has been proposed to monitor the site. The EDC downplays the effects of the dredging project, claiming that it will be handled in a safe manner with the toxic materials removed using best management practices for hazardous waste removal. Hazardous material removal is never perfect. Ferries docking and turning in the narrow channel will stir up toxins now buried under a cap of clean sand that covers the creek's bottom. There is no plan for mitigation because there is no larger long-term master plan for Coney Island Creek that reflects the important and interrelated needs of ecological, recreational, residential, water quality, storm resilience, and education concerns that are the legacy of disinvestment and doing things on the cheap. 14 reasons why Kaiser Park is the worst location for a ferry dock. Number 1, loss of the fishing pier. Most local kids learn to fish at the Kaiser Park Pier and shoreline. Derek Batts owns the Coney Island Hook and Bait Shop, located half a block from Coney Island Creek. He knows the importance of fishing for Coney Island's youth and how fishing connects kids to the environment and keeps them out of trouble. Thanks to the city's ferry dock, this educational and recreational resource will soon be degraded and lost to the community.
This kid was so excited after they came from the back. His mother caught just a couple of small porgies, nothing that was, so extravagant, but it gave the child a chance to do something that he never done, and he was so excited. Seeing the kid's face, this kid's face lit up. Oh, we caught porgies. Listen, we saw these big old helmet things in the water, the big old crabs. These are the things that I was like, well, shorty, I was trying to tell you that these are the great things that you got back here. He said, I didn't know that they have that many fish back there. I saw a man catching blue claw crabs. They were so big.
Look what we have here. You can't find us anyplace else.
But
They don't care about the people fishing. Been fishing here for 40 years. You know, and it's going to be a shame to see if this all gets destroyed.
This pier is very important to all the residents in Coney Island. I know a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of fishermen that fish around here know this. Sure. The nickname of this pier is the UN of Brooklyn. And you know why we call it the UN of Brooklyn? Because you come up here, you get to meet all kinds of people. Mm-hmm. All kinds of races, all kinds of creeds, and we all get along. We all respect each other. These are people that you wouldn't even probably bump into.
Although the EDC claims that fishing will not be affected by the ferry dock, a foreman of the construction crew doing core samples was more honest, agreeing that fishing at the pier will be hampered by the ferries. He explained that ferries coming in every half hour would have a negative effect.
The wave action and everything, and the ferries coming in every half hour in both directions is going to affect the fish, I would think.
So you think they would close the pier for fishing, or do they allow fishing?
I don't think they'll close it.
Oh, but
I just don't think you're going to catch anything if you try fishing over there anymore.
Yeah. Fishing requires casting out lines into the water. Once the dock is constructed, casting will be impossible as you would hook the boats or passengers. Ferries also churn up the water and scare fish away from the pier. It's as if no one from the EDC has ever gone fishing, and they definitely have never fished at Kaiser Park. An important recreational activity for Coney Island is being destroyed by the city for a questionable ferry project. Number 2, inherent danger in the creek. The Kaiser Park Pier and the adjacent sandbar on the channel are also known as the best fishing spots for a local community of subsistence anglers. Fish caught at this location, striped bass, bluefish, and albacore, are coming from the ocean and considered safer to eat than the fish that live in the creek. Ferry boats entering the channel will encounter people in the water. The dredged channel will have a sharp drop-off, making the waters dangerous. Large ferry boats transiting this channel will limit and negatively impact public usage of what was formerly a tranquil, safe environment. Dredged areas of the channel will become deeper, toxic, and hazardous. Access will be limited, and there is no enforcement at this location to keep people out of the water. The proposed ferry dock will result in a net loss of protected mudflats and tidal wetlands. Ferry boats do not belong in this environment. Number 3, small boats and navigational hazards. When ferries transit the narrow channel at the mouth of Coney Island Creek, they will be sharing the water with small boats. The dangerous inherent navigational problems are unique to the area, as no other ferry docks are located in crowded recreational areas. This creates an extremely unsafe situation for the public and the ferries. Most of the boats are small rowboats and inflatables, as well as kayaks, jet skis, and speedboats that have no ability to navigate out of the path of large ferry boats. There is no way to avoid collisions. No enforcement is in place in the parks to ensure safety. Another safety issue is the fog that can shroud the waterway, making visibility impossible. The north shoreline is rocky and unforgiving should a ferry run aground. The EDC makes the false claim that the ferries can safely navigate in the channel, but in reality, this will be impossible. The city's plan to place huge ferry boats at Kaiser Park creates severe liability issues. The EDC just doesn't seem to care about public safety. Number 4, kayaks at the fishing pier. Have a good trip.
Thank you.
The small beach in front of the Kaiser Park Pier is the only location in Coney Island where people can safely launch a kayak, an activity that's gained popularity over the past decade. If the ferry dock is built, it will destroy this launch site, eliminating one more recreational activity from Kaiser Park.
Cause you move fast, but when you're going with the grain, when you're going against the current, you'll get in, but you won't get in as fast as you went out.
Number 5, sand drift and ferries running aground. The narrow channel at the mouth of Coney Island Creek is in constant transition caused by drifting sands carried by tidal action from the ocean side of Coney Island. Kaiser Park's shoreline can often be covered by windblown sand overnight. By placing the ferry dock in Kaiser Park, the EDC is ignoring the inherent problems of shoaling. Dredging can also lead to shoreline dune erosion, adding yet another potential danger to the long list of navigational issues at this site. What the EDC failed to realize is that the depth of the channel can change in a matter of hours after rainstorms or windstorms or during beach replenishment. This will lead to the grounding of ferry boats or the closure of the channel. No other ferry dock location has been constructed in such a dangerous area. The EDC is risking the lives of ferry passengers. In the winter of 2017, 2 New York City ferry boats ran aground on sandbars, endangering the lives of passengers. These groundings were in open water, and rescue boats were able to evacuate the passengers. The narrow channel at Kaiser Park would make rescues extremely dangerous, especially in the dark. Why did the EDC choose such a hazardous location when there were safer options? The Kaiser Park dock is an accident waiting to happen.
On this ferry bound for Sunset Park and the Rockaways. About 100 feet from the dock, it got stuck and started taking on water. Divers braved the...
Number 6, horseshoe crab spawning habitat. For the last decade, horseshoe crabs have returned to Coney Island Creek. From May through July, the crabs are a presence on the creek, and local groups and students work with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation to survey and tag the species as they come ashore in Kaiser Park to spawn and lay their eggs on the park's shoreline. Habitat loss is a major concern for horseshoe crabs, and any loss or disturbance of habitat will have a negative effect. To enter the creek, the crabs must navigate the narrow channel that the EDC wants to dredge for the ferry project. This dredging activity and operation of the ferry will have a detrimental effect on the crabs and their habitat. This environmentally sensitive location is the wrong place for a ferry dock. The EDC doesn't seem to care about horseshoe crabs or the environment.
It's already March and May is around the corner when horseshoe crab monitoring will take place right here at Kaiser Park. And what we do with that information is we figure out how loyal, how much the horseshoe crabs really come back to the same site time and again. And we do that with those numbers.
Number 7, loss of wildlife habitat on the creek. The north side of Coney Island Creek, opposite the fishing pier, is lined with the wrecks of wooden barges. These wrecks provide essential habitat for aquatic wildlife. Crabs, eels, and schools of baitfish live in these wrecks, attracting bluefish, striped bass, and albacore to the mouth of Coney Island Creek and Kaiser Park. This habitat will be destroyed by the backwash of idling ferry boats, as can be seen in this video. The ferries will turn from the dock in a wide 300-foot radius that will heavily impact the wrecks, disturb wildlife, and possibly cause the wrecks to fragment. Debris from the wrecks will float into the channel, adding yet another safety issue to ferry operation. The tight turning radius of the ferry so close to shore will also negatively impact the protected mudflats of Kaiser Park shoreline. Ferries will destroy an important and delicate ecosystem that has taken years to recover. Ferry boats do not belong at the Kaiser Park fishing pier. Coney Island has been dumped on for way too long. Coney Island Creek has a sad legacy of oil spills, sewage spills, and illegal dumping. Now the ferry dock will be added to that legacy. Number 8, the creek freezes in the winter. Another danger that the city is ignoring is that Coney Island Creek often freezes over in the winter and the channel can remain blocked with ice for weeks at a time. Sometimes it's possible to walk across Coney Island Creek from one side to the other. How are ferries going to operate in these conditions? This is obviously the wrong site for a ferry dock. Number 9, destruction of Atlantic Flyway Refuge. Coney Island Creek is located on the Atlantic Flyway, a migratory route for birds in North America. The brant goose is a bird that flies south from their breeding grounds in the high Arctic tundra. The birds spend the winter in a narrow strip along the Atlantic coast. Coney Island Creek provides a winter refuge for the brant and other waterfowl. The site of the EDC's proposed ferry dock is a refuge for thousands of wintering waterfowl that shelter all winter in this protected cove. The EDC's ferry plan will degrade and destroy the winter habitat of an exquisite species that's already lost marine habitat from development along the coast. Why is the city being allowed to destroy this habitat? They just don't seem to care. Number 10, loss of recreational birding habitat. Bird watching is the fastest growing recreational activity in the United States, and Coney Island Creek has become a hotspot for local birders. More than 243 species have been reported on the creek. The operation of a commercial ferry at Kaiser Park will pollute and degrade the creek's fragile avian ecosystem, as well as interfere with the public's enjoyment of the 3 public parks located along the creek.
Where it's nice because you sit here and you watch, there's a belted kingfisher diving in 6 feet going in and from that pole. And you'll see this is a feeding ground. When it gets low tide, you're going to see egrets, everything around here. And they just come here like these swans. Now it's with the babies. You're going to see these 4 baby swans with their mother and father. They're going to be here every day because this is great feeding water. I'm amazed at, especially since retiring, at the urban air parks, what they have. You know how natural, the water's clean. A lot of people say it's filthy. It's not filthy because these guys, grebies, you got grebies coming in, they eat. I showed you the pictures of them eating the fish. Right there, you see the...
Number 11, destruction of a spiritual refuge. Kaiser Park shoreline provides a respite from the hectic Coney Island neighborhood. It provides a spiritual retreat for the community. The EDC would like to destroy this peaceful environment by jamming a commercial ferry operation into an already underserved public park. This ferry project is disrespectful, disruptive, and impinges on religious freedoms as well as the community's right to worship in a peaceful and unimpeded environment. Number 12, more hazards to navigation. The Coney Island Creek location for the proposed ferry dock can be extremely hazardous to navigation. Shoals can appear suddenly in rough weather, leaving little room for error when transiting the channel. The area also has a problem with abandoned or wrecked small boats that can appear overnight, blocking access to the creek. Hazardous debris, including broken pilings, often wash up and clog the channel. In the past, it has taken months, if not years, for the removal of these hazards to navigation. These wrecks will wreak havoc with ferry schedules as well as endangering ferry passengers. The EDC passed up much safer dock locations to choose the wrong place for a ferry landing. Number 13, loss of environmental education. The Kaiser Park Fishing Pier and Shoreline have served as an environmental classroom where community members come together to learn more about issues affecting the Coney Island Creek estuary. Construction of the ferry dock will destroy this outdoor classroom, bringing to an end years of public engagement and education at the pier. City officials who want to put the ferry in this location just don't seem to care about what Kaiser Park means to the community. They really don't care about education or the collaboration between the community and local schools that will end when the vulnerable Kaiser Park shoreline is transformed into a commercial ferry landing. Kaiser Park is the site of events and festivals that bring thousands of students and community members to Coney Island Creek for volunteer service, learning programs, and cleanups. Events such as City of Water Day, It's My Estuary Day, International Coastal Cleanup, and Beyond the Sea Festival provide outdoor learning and environmental stewardship. Coney Island Beautification Project, the Billion Oyster Project, the Coastal Classroom, John Dewey High School, Cultural Research Divers, Partnership for Parks, the New York Aquarium, the Coney Island History Project, and the Coney Island Explorers are just some of the organizations that will lose access to this precious open space when construction and continual dredging operations transform the cove and the pier. The ferry will interfere with the oyster beds of the Billion Oyster Project. It will interfere with water testing and analysis. Underwater robotics demonstrations will end. Divers will be unable to enter the creek at this location. Fish counts and surveys will be hampered. Hands-on learning will come to an end. Marine science programs will be forced out of the only safe location on Coney Island Creek. The young stewards of Coney Island Creek are losing their classroom. Number 14, environmental racism. Coney Island asked for a ferry. Instead, the city is providing the community with a deadly toxic mixture of lead, dioxin, mercury, PCBs, arsenic, and pesticides. The EDC has shown utter contempt for the Coney Island community. The city says the ferry will shorten the commute, but this project will also shorten people's lives by exposing the public to toxic pollution and hazardous conditions. The city's plan to place the dock in a vulnerable, recovering estuarine habitat was made long before the environmental impact statement was released in late January 2020. The city's report describes construction impact, but not the long-term impact to the community, public parks, or the environment after completion of the project. The report also glosses over the impact on Kaiser Park from automobile traffic and foot traffic from the ferry. This ferry location has made few residents happy, and there's a real feeling of betrayal in the community. The amusement businesses in central Coney Island lobbied for years for an oceanfront ferry, only to have it placed in the West End, far from their businesses. West End residents have expressed valid concerns about the impact caused by thousands of seasonal visitors being stranded in their neighborhood without a viable means of transportation to or from the ferry. The vice president of community relations for the ferry project told me that it's only a commuter ferry and that, quote, tourists will only take it once before realizing it's not for them. Many in the community feel that the dock sites were chosen to serve the newly constructed high-rises located 3 blocks away. The city has offered no mitigation or increased enforcement to protect the public parks and environmentally sensitive areas surrounding the dock. A false narrative is being circulated implying that community members don't want a Coney Island ferry. Nothing is further from the truth. Coney Island needs alternate forms of transportation, but the project has to be done right. The EDC has a take-it-or-leave-it attitude, and the community be damned. This project requires an independent impact assessment as well as remediation and mitigation to protect the long-term health and well-being of the community and the Coney Island Creek estuary. In other words, this is a classic example of environmental racism. A majority of people who use the Kaiser Park shoreline are people of color or immigrants, many of whom don't speak English. Many feed their families through subsistence fishing at this site. It's also an inexpensive form of recreation. Environmental racism happens when communities of color are disproportionately burdened with health hazards through policies and practices that expose them to sources of toxic waste such as sewage, landfills, and emitters of airborne particulate matter. As a result, these communities suffer greater rates of health problems from hazardous pollutants. For 25 years, a toxic landfill and illegal sanitation department incinerator operated across the creek from Kaiser Park. People in the West End suffer higher rates of asthma and other diseases with links to pollution. The park and creek have had a slow recovery that will be reversed by the dredging in the creek and the operation of the ferry. Coney Island Creek has a history of abuse, and this project will go down in history as one of the worst because now we're supposed to know better. Now is the time for environmental justice.
I hope you got the message, because it ain't no game no more. We send you a message. We don't want no ferry here.
Because the Rock said it.